welcome you all again. It's been almost a month, and I know it's a bit, tedious to be present for this recurring event that keeps happening almost every month. And I really admire your patience and your willingness to pursue this program and be a part of the work that INTACH is trying to do. So thank you so much again, and I really appreciate whatever efforts you're trying to put in despite of all the adversities. So yeah, we'll probably move forward and come to our topic of today, the commitment 3 that we were supposed to discuss, which kind of relates culture and education and kind of emphasizes on the fact and its importance as to what makes it so vital in order to be able to take up this program. Of course, education is something that, okay, so there can be a little bit of difference between being literate and being educated. Education has got more to do about understanding the underlying values of the topic that you're trying to, learn about. So when it comes to culture, all these, the values that we tend to learn about are something that we start learning at an early stage in our lives. And that's how we can probably, say that we belong to certain, we tend to associate with certain culture more, or that is probably where we find ourselves more inclined to, because they kind of formulate our basic understanding since childhood. And that is where it becomes very important to inculcate those values in the earliest stages possible. So that is what makes education an important tool for propagating, for propagating the culture that we anyway are advocates of. And of course, the program kind of emphasizes on the fact. I'll just quickly give you a little bit of introduction of what all things it says us to do. And then probably we'll have our, resource person. Just a second. All right. So the commitment 3 that exclusively and explicitly talks about promoting active citizenship through construction of cultural capacities. What they're trying to do is, and trying to say is that it's very essential in order to be able to propagate culture while building capacities in whatever possible forms. They talk about how culture has, culture has a very distinct relationship between education, and one can enhance and advocate the cultural, capabilities of a place by improving its access to the, to the cultural resources that there are present. There can be different and numerous ways where one can, participate, and the best possible source to do that, since we're talking about education, is schools or the formal or informal education setups or centers that are already there in place. It also talks about the promotion of the connections between the institutional knowledge. Of course, the institutions that are there, that have been there, they have a proper setup in place, and they are very well built. And it's always better to utilize them as a resource in order to be able to build upon that cultural knowledge. Knowledge that emerges from daily life on day-to-day basis, thereby contributing to the social innovation and design. Of course, when we know more about our culture, it anyway invariably helps us to develop more, understand more about our surroundings, about, about our evolution, about development in general, thereby aiding us in, in coming up innovative solutions to be able to maintain that. And of course, the this particular commitment in the agenda talks about the technical innovations that are there that one should also understand and cater to. It's not just, I keep emphasizing on the fact that culture is not something that should be phrased in a particular box or phrased in some memory. It should be very much relevant, and it should move on with time. It should, it should cater to the people who are trying to associate with it, trying to make it more relevant, more approachable, and more adaptable. So, and what better way to do it other than, utilizing the fact that we have proper educational institutes or, educational setups that are there. That's about it. That is what the commitment talks about. I will now, very gladly invite Ms. Poonima Dutt, who is an integral part of INTACH HEX division. She's the director there. And HEX, I am sure as chapters, you are very well aware how HEX has been consistently, active in getting this thing done, even before all these agendas and all these programs came up. This is something that we truly believe in, and HEX has been doing that since long. So we welcome you, ma'am. And the main purpose of getting someone to talk about is to make chapters and people, the members understand that how, what's the basic relationship between the both, how they can be used synonymously, not, differently. And there, of course, is a very strong link. So, of course, Poonima ma'am will be able to tell it better. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to you. Thank you.
So we are very happy to do this session on cities and culture with our chapters. And before I request Nanki and Smriti to put on the presentation, maybe if you all can just tell me which chapters you all are from, that will be good. So Lalit Pandey sir, though I know sir, you're the convener of Udaipur chapter, sir. So we're very honored to have you today, sir. And Amrita Vaidya
Amrita
is
works
from
us.
with
Yes.
us. Okay, and Nokia 3 ma'am is from ma'am कौन से chapter से आप हो ma'am? The Nokia 3 Akriti Bhatnagar.
Akriti is the person, she was in charge of the Bhopal chapter where we did our pilot city. So she's again one of the speakers.
Okay.
She'll be sharing more.
Okay, and Aarti Navandar Rathi.
Yeah, hi ma'am. I have not done any chapter. I've just attended to know about the things.
Oh, that's amazing.
Okay.
Welcome, you welcome.
And Nandini Agarwal. Meghna Chatterjee.
Hello, ma'am. I'm assistant professor in DIT University, Dehradun currently.
Okay. And are you connected with the Dehradun chapter?
Yes. I work with INTACH Uttarakhand chapter. I have interned with them during my master's, and previously I was working as an architectural consultant for Savai Madhopur chapter.
Okay. So excellent. And Ananya?
Hi, ma'am. I'm also a conservation architect. I'm currently not actively working with any chapter, but I'm in Lucknow and I'm associated with them. But this webinar, I've just joined to be a part of the webinar, not representing any chapter really.
Okay. Then I can see joining. There are two more. Chinmay is there. So Chinmay.
I think today a lot of them are not here. I don't know why, because I get it. It's a bit tedious, to keep a tab every month and join.
Right. Yeah. So I guess then we will start. Yeah.
Yes,
so
please.
If you all put on the presentation. So we at the Heritage Education and Communication Service, I think our premise is this, that we have to have children carry forward, the aspect of sustainability, which is a dimension of our Indian culture. So education in culture, it's basically an inclusive approach to sustainable development. So if I visualize development and I visualize sustainability, so if we visualize it as a seesaw, the fulcrum which holds all of it together is our culture. And if we look at the goals, the next slide, if we take the 16 sustainable goals, the next slide. if we take the goals and you take the fourth goal, which is quality education, is correlated to almost every goal. After that, health is perceived by itself, hunger and poverty are by themselves. But if we take all the other goals are somehow interrelated with our cultural dimension. So even if it is climatic action, even if it is life on land, life on water, peace, reduce inequalities, there is a dimension of culture in all of them. So the next one. So it's only isolating the first three, which are independent and by themselves. All the other goals have more or less a correlationship with culture. So therefore, if we take the role of culture, and more specifically cultural education, we realize that culture is an essential component of sustainable development, because culture represents a source of identity, a source of innovation, creativity, and in every way sustainability is wrapped up by our cultural dimension. And even a factor like building social inclusion, which is essential for economic growth, that in many ways is related to our cultural story. And culture also fosters an understanding and a tolerance and a mutual respect. So having a dimension of cultural education at a very young age, we look forward to the sustainable goals through a good quality cultural education. So the next slide. So the culture is a driver. Now this is a fact, is a driver in sustainable development. And Article 13 emphasizes on integrating culture with sustainable development policies. And this has been proof that linkages between culture and SDGs show that cultural traits are linked to the achievement of all 17 SDGs. So whether it was even the first three where I said they are independent, but somewhat their achievements are also associated with culture. This is represented by 133 of the entire breakup of your 16 goals into this 169 targets. And cultural values explain as much as 26% of the variations in the achievement of SDGs. And this showcases the fact that cultural values influence the achievement of SDGs. So we need to start young with cultural education, and that is the task of us at the Heritage Education and Communication Service Division. So I am there with Smriti Malhotra and with Nanki Kaur, and we are going to conduct this session for you all today. So the primary objective of INTACH, which is mentioned in the Memorandum of Association, is to create and stimulate awareness amongst the public for the preservation of the cultural and natural heritage of India, and to respect the knowledge of past experience and skills. So at the heart of whatever INTACH is achieving, so whether it's listing, whether it's conservation, it has to be carrying forward, your education. So this is to enlighten, the people that they are the custodians or the trustees of heritage. So in a democracy, where our constitution reaffirms that heritage belongs to all, it necessitates that heritage education also should be there for everyone. And this is clearly brought out by our fundamental duties. So there are three fundamental duties which bring out the fact that we are responsible for taking care of our natural and cultural heritage. Next. So why is it that heritage education is important, and what is its importance in looking at sustainability? It supports the unity of India. Like, for example, yesterday we had a program which was on the mother language, which covered a few chapters. So what even the learnings from each language, that clearly brought out that no matter what, there was a tree or a language tree which integrated all these languages together. So heritage education is a force for cohesion in a society which is marked by pluralism. So it emphasizes the diversities of the people of our country, and it promotes cultural literacy, and it creates a workable blend of continuity and change. These sound like very big points, but you start with one, it gradually flows into the other, and we've been doing it for so many years, and we realize that cultural literacy comes when we start with children very young. And in these 2 years, what we have realized is in all the dimensions of cultural education we are using, we have had to adapt it to the changing educational ideas in our country today, and also to realize that we have to use the influx of educational aids to which the children are exposed to today, and the children are also exposed to to the visual medium to almost a saturation level, that nothing works without a visual excitement. And the pressure on families today, families with economic disparities, families with poverty, families with nothing available but a mobile phone to share. It's been a struggle for us in these 2 years, but it has been a possibility with our conveners who even have reached out to tribal communities, and we have conducted workshops. So whether it was training workshops for teachers, whether it was reaching out through your local crafts, it has been a possibility, even if it was 4 or 5 children sharing one phone. Also, another point which was noticed was the increasing generation gaps, whether it is gaps between the rich and the poor, the older and the younger. We are currently at a point in time where the gaps have really been increased, and this is reflected in us, in our the development of all our educational modules. We have to keep in pace with the teachers who are at a different level of learning to the children. So you have to work out on one kind of a program for the child and a different kind of program for the teachers. Next. So the process we have worked out is reaching out to the teachers through the teacher training, setting up of heritage clubs with the students, development of resource materials. So whether it's for training, whether it's for reading, whether it's for activities, it is developing different kinds of resource material. The website is there, which is a visual support which we are giving, our Facebook and our Instagram pages. So our social media support, the national programs which are conducted by all our INTACH chapters, the use of the mass media, whether it is in the form of social media today or whether it's in the form of films, the local chapter level activities which are done beautifully by our INTACH chapters, and schools who do their activities conducted and which we support. And finally, we also take the support of the colleges and the students, and we encourage them to volunteer, and we have an entire volunteer training program for colleges. And finally, a citizenship training program which is done with our chapters, and which then the chapters take ahead with their own target group of working out on how citizenship and culture and heritage are correlated. Next. So in our training, we have training for heritage awareness and setting up of heritage clubs, adopting a heritage. So whether it's adopting a monument or adopting a tree or adopting a craft, volunteerism. What is the act of volunteerism? What are the projects which can be done for volunteerism? How do you volunteer with the organization? How do you promote volunteerism in your institution? And heritage and citizenship training. So we believe that one teacher and one educator and one convener who is enlightened to the importance of cultural education then can reach out effectively to the students, and then the students can reach out to the to the local community. Next. So in our programs in the last maybe 15 to 16 years, we have covered 132 cities. Some of the cities we would have done multiple workshops. We have more than 4,000 heritage clubs, trained 5,500 teachers. We have 4 lakh heritage club members, and the outreach is around 22 lakh students. So our training workshops are urban. I'll go back. Are urban. They are also rural urban and rural. Only thing is, in the last 2 years, we have done rural urban, but completely rural has been a little difficult in these 2 years. But I presume things have opened up and we will be able to do that in the future. Right? So we have a handbook, which is Hands-on Heritage, which is a handbook for heritage clubs. We initially developed this book in English and Hindi, and a teacher's kit is also being developed. And this teacher's kit is in English, Hindi, and it's also has been developed in Telugu. So this is a handbook which is given for the setting up and for the running of heritage clubs. We have translated this book into major languages. I'll take the next one. So the major languages we cover in our handbook is, we have it in Tamil, we have it in Telugu. I'll take the next slide. We have it in Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, Gujarati, Marathi, Bengali, and in Urdu. And after the book was published, we did the training of our conveners on the usage of this book for their local chapters. And Nanki, you will continue with the next one. Oh, sorry, I'll take this. So we've also got a set of books, which again, these books are important if we look at sustainability, because they bring out clearly on how you carry on an effort to look after, your culture, or even natural heritage, and how do you do it for a span of a few years. So whether it's adopting a monument, whether it's adopting a tree, adopting a craft, or caring for heritage, we've done it in English and in Hindi. It tells us how to protect and care for heritage. So even if it's an exposure to, to the craftsmen, or it's an exposure to the organizations which look after monuments, we have been, using these books effectively for a number of years. The next, Nanki, you'll take up.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So as ma'am explained, heritage clubs are set up in different states and all across India to carry out heritage education. And as part of this, each student member gets a Young INTACH newsletter, which is a fun-filled thematic quarterly newsletter for children. And it is filled with articles, drawings, how to do pages, activities, and competitions, which are very helpful for students. Then we also have regional language newsletters, which are translated every 3 to 4 years in different languages such as Tamil, Telugu, Punjabi, Gujarati, and Marathi. Then we also have books such as Indian culture. So Indian culture, it contains information about the whole span of Indian history, from ancient to medieval to modern. And it is a book which explains Indian history in a very concise and easy manner for children to understand. Then we also have resource books for teachers and students, such as the Tree of Life book, which is an activity book on nature education. And it gives information on trees, the role they play in our heritage and in our culture. Then we also have books like Delhi Ki Shaan, which is based on the culture of Delhi and the heritage from intangible and tangible aspects. HEX also has the India Unlimited Travel Diary. We have 2 volumes of these, and they talk about the heritage and the culture from all across India. And we also have the 15-year anniversary issue of the Young INTACH newsletter. Then HEX also
publishes books such as children's stories books, which are also coloring books for children. And these give information about specific regions and their cultures, such as the book They Sang Builds a Root Bridge, which talks about the culture of Meghalaya, and The Hornbill Warrior, No Nagaland, talks about the culture and heritage of Nagaland. We also have a coloring book on the Andaman Nicobar Islands. There are also the city book series that have been made by HEX for education of heritage. And the cities covered are Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai, and Jaipur. And these talk about a story of children visiting these cities and understanding their culture, learning about their heritage. Over to you, ma'am.
So as Nanki shared the reason why, we have done these books on Meghalaya, on Nagaland, on the Andamans, in many ways is to make the children, on this side of the country to be more aware of, the Northeast, the culture of the Northeast, the role of integrating, the diversities in our country. And we have tried our best to work it out with these publications. And this is done at a very young age for children, the primary school level. And currently we are working on the Sikkim book. We also worked out on a visual aid to bring out, the role of a religion. So we took Islam and we related this to monument. We related it to the arts. We related it to music and to cultural expressions, and we developed this as an aid, to understand. So therefore, we called it heritage and harmony. So therefore, we can understand, the role of every kind of religion in our country. And also, we did a diary on peace, which is called Kids Speak Peace, to bring out the importance of peace education, which is one of the sustainable goals, and to spread the word of INTACH across the country. We did a set of ITC classmate notebooks. We developed content, and that was basically to get children to learn about certain, like we did on Hampi, we did on the Gol Gumbaz, and it was to increase the knowledge of even children in very remote areas on Indian culture. Next. We have one very successful program where, through the use of the camera or the visuals, we are getting children to document their local culture. And with the documentation of the local culture, we would expect them to develop a sense of responsibility. And that has actually happened in a very large number of children who have done this program. We started this program in 2008 with Delhi. And currently we have 16 INTACH chapters working on the program with us. And it's been 14 years. And we have around 4,000, more than 4,000 films, or around 5,000 films made by children. So whether it's public school children, whether it's government school children, it is, to enhance their learnings of not only their city's local heritage, but in these 2 years, it's also been their learning of their own personal intangible heritage. And maybe if there is a little time, we would show you one or two of these films, because they really touch upon sustainability very beautifully. Next. So next, I think, Smriti, you will take the online resources.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be quickly going through the online resources that we have at Young INTACH, at HEX INTACH. So we have a website, Young INTACH, that we are regularly updating and we are putting up worksheets and all our news and our club news and everything else that we do is regularly updated onto our website. Besides that, we also have our social media handles. Given the situation in the last 2 years, how the pandemic rolled out, we have decided to build on our virtual audience and interact further with all the young individuals online. So we have our Facebook page, Young INTACH Facebook page, and we also have an Instagram page. And besides that, we also have a video gallery on our website, as well as a YouTube page that we are also regularly updating. Yeah, so to quickly go over the activities and all that we have on the Young INTACH website, we have the What's New section, which is regularly updated with all the worksheets and the activities and all the booklets and all the resource material and education material that we put out for all the teachers and the students to access. All they have to do is simply log in and register themselves, and they can have access to everything that we are constantly putting out within the realm of heritage onto our website. So we have sections. We have, like how you see living heritage as a section here. We also have material heritage, built heritage, and natural heritage that we are constantly updating. Besides that, like I mentioned, we also have a video gallery page onto our website, which is linked to our YouTube channel. It has videos and films that were made by the Film It project that ma'am mentioned. Besides that, any other video and any other film that we work on within the division and with our chapters in collaboration is also updated onto the channel, as well as our video gallery page. Besides that, we have our Facebook page that we are constantly working on engaging and constantly working on upgrading, and we're putting out facts and days that matter and factoids about heritage and challenges every week for our virtual audience and our young students to interact us with. And recently we put out a challenge on Republic Day song challenge, and we put out a sketch a radio challenge, and we have recently put out another challenge keeping the mother tongue language in mind today itself. So we're constantly upgrading and updating our social media handle. Similarly on Instagram, as you can see, we are putting out not just the challenges, but also the entries, also all that we receive from our audience and our students. We are constantly trying to put those out for our audience to see and learn from and see how they're engaging with us online. So all their entries that we receive is also put out on both these channels.
I'm sorry, I'll just quickly intervene. I'm so sorry, Nanki.
Yeah.
It's just that we have the other speaker waiting and we just have time till 5:15. I'm really sorry. But you can just quickly wrap it up. Whatever.
Ma'am, if you can take it over from here.
So we do activities at the national level, chapter level, and school activities. I'll take the next slide. So it's a 3-tier, work on our activities. The next one. So at the national level, we have, the INTACH Heritage Quiz. We also have our national program, which last year we had done. If you all can move on to the next slide. Our national program, which we had done, is on nature in danger. So taking nature in danger, children shared with us what is the kind of work they were doing for sustainability, sitting at home for a year or so. So whether it was, working with recycling, whether it was working with, use of traditional methods, it was done in different ways. Can we move on to the next slide? Okay, I finished with that. The next, you just skip, I'll tell you where to stop. Okay, the next one. So these are the creative campaigns, and each creative campaign, it's a learning for the children. So this was the last year's campaign. What we did was, and on promoting all these are aspects of, environmental sustainability. Next. And we were funded the projects of the students further, where they carried on their initiative in their local region. So whether it was this girl Parnika who did the recycling initiative in Kakinada next, or it was Oud Singh who worked on water body cleanup using moringa in Varanasi. We had 15 children who we funded on the development of their programs. This year we are keeping the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav in mind, and we are asking children to document their heritage of 90 years. This, makes them have an ownership with their local heritage. Next. So arts and crafts awareness workshops is, to expose the children to local craftsperson so that they understand what the life of the craftsperson is, what are the issues he's facing, and to promote the initiative of a local endangered crafts. So whether it's Mandi Kalam in Mandi or Kasargod, the coconut craft, or Gond paintings, or Mangalore's Kavi Kale, there have been very successful initiatives of endangered craft awareness. Next. And then, of course, children by themselves in their schools undertake activities. Each one of these activities is not only a learning about culture, but it's a sense of appreciation which the children, develop. Next. So exemplary heritage education program is moving beyond the textbook to developing activities to enrich learning, from videos to hands-on experiences, and to living up to your constitutional role as trustees of heritage, which then carries forward the goals of sustainable development. Next. So I will skip these. We do the volunteer training, which we have covered more than 150 institutions. Next. We have done citizenship training. We have done it in 5 phases and have covered close to 15 states of India. Next. These are all the publications for whether it is Jago for citizenship training or booklets for college volunteer training. Next. Dissemination of a learning of sustainability we did on material heritage and conservation in buildings sustainability and heritage education in Asia, where we publicized on an integrated Southeast Asia, bringing out the importance of heritage education. And I'll take the final slide. So looking at these goals, as is aware to you from the very beginning, is all these goals are interrelated and are brought out by children having a good educational component in their educational system. Final. So I won't go through this. This brings out in what are the different ways INTACH chapters have worked on heritage and citizenship. And taking a pledge in our country, it is important to understand that sustainability is something which is ingrained in our culture. And if that is not happening, then perhaps the major role is poor cultural education. And it is done at home, definitely, but a lot of it comes with, good curriculum enrichment and good non-formal activities, which we are working on for, schools across the country. So thank you so much. Thank you. So are there any questions?
I think, ma'am, it's better that we take it once we are done with the whole session. I think because I recall Lalit ji having a little bit of questions earlier in the first session where he wanted to know how do we go about doing something with respect to education and how do we use them as a tool. So of course they might have certain questions. I'll quickly, share the ways where we can probably, deal, and we can see, or the program asks us to go in a certain way. So the program suggests us to identify, first of all, identification of the local cultural values are very much necessary. And the program kind of motivates us to do that in order to be able to pursue the things that can probably be later taken on. Awareness, of course, we as an institute and as an organization strongly believe in, of course, Chairman Sir calls, he calls us all as heritage warriors, and that's what we are. And capacity building in that sense is very necessary, and it's all about creating awareness at the right moment, at the right time. And I think what you sow is what you reap. So earlier, if at all you embed that seed in the earlier stages, it's always better. And that's how that sense of cultural awareness gets integrated. Then how do you, again, an important point here is the program that kind of emphasizes on is how, of course, there are education policies put in place in every state, every area. And even with respect to national level, there is a standard education policy. But does education policy in any way identifies anything with culture? Even with respect to the state boards, do they anyhow in any way emphasize the importance of culture in order to bring that education front more, better? So it's always said that in the program that you need to understand it and see what all things are being taken at that front. Apart from that, are there any local platforms or are there any online portals or maybe some repositories that aid in the dissemination of cultural knowledge that is already there in place? Of course, INTACH local chapters do that sort of an activity in some capacity. And we have different divisions also trying to do it as much as possible and trying to build that repository in some way or the other. But are there any other local platforms? If so, then it's always better to identify them and work with them in their alliance. Now, with the current era, there is a lot of emphasis on digital education, all these things coming up with the COVID scenario and everything. And of course, digitally sharing the information, it becomes much more accessible to the people out there, and with no physical presence required. So is there any such formula being used? And if so, then how? Then of course, if not, nothing is done on a cumulative level. Of course, if it is not done, then are any individual schools or education institutes taking up that responsibility in creating, distributing, and dissemination of that cultural knowledge? So that is what program lists down as certain points that you can probably look into in your local chapters or local towns or cities and see how they are probably bringing it about. I think now we will discuss it furthermore with Akriti. And what she did with respect to the case of Bhopal, she'll probably take up those 10 or 12 action points and see what all was there in Bhopal. So Akriti.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
So I'll just share my screen and
Sure.
Quickly we'll go through the action points. Yeah, screen is visible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so with this action point, I think Sukriti and ma'am have laid out a very good foundation to actually understand this commitment better. And I'll just go through each and every action point. So what we were trying to do with this commitment was trying to understand that how culture has been understood in the educational framework of the state or city per se. So be it cultural institutions. When I say cultural institutions, I mean the education institutions that specifically cater to some specific parameter of culture. For example, be it some music like Sangeet Academy or some linguistic kind of an institution. Also, education institutions, for example, are schools and colleges. So their academic curriculum, how it inculcates the culture of that particular city or particular state into their academic curriculum. So with respect to Bhopal, we tried to see a few of these points. So first action point was incorporating local cultural values in education and training strategies. So certainly, one of the examples that we could find was that in teachers training programs, subjects like local culture, they are included. And as per Board of Secondary Education, training program for teachers is conducted for different subjects. Now, the reason we looked into this was because apart from what we are teaching students, it's also important to see and understand that what kind of training we are giving to teachers, because teachers would be the one who would be taking it forward and would be informing or educating students about it. So the agenda doesn't mention culture specifically, but becomes a component of any other subject. So for example, if I say that culture per se is not a specific program in that program, like a subject in that program, but a lot of various subjects would have bits and pieces of some like touching or hitting upon some aspect of culture into their subject framework. So this is one of the action points, and it certainly needs incorporation as a separate module in the training program, but currently it is not there. So in informal manner, in the teaching curriculum manner, it has been included, but not as a part of some formal structural document that identifies local cultural values and their inclusion in the education and training strategies at the city level. So this is one of the reference points for this particular action point that you can see, that Board of Secondary Education Activities, where it mentions teacher training program, and this training program includes culture in bits and pieces. Then second is formulation of a strategy which links the educational policy with cultural policy. As you remember in our previous discussions on the previous commitments, we have very clearly established this understanding that cultural policy, as of now, there is no state level or city level cultural policy. Educational policy is there, which is a dedicated education policy for the state. Even center has an educational policy, but there is no direct linkage between them, because in the absence of cultural policy as a specific or a separate policy framework that addresses culture. And if we have some sort of a cultural policy in place, we can certainly bring education policy or points from education policy and try to link these two aspects together. But in the absence of cultural policy, this becomes difficult, but there are certain points or certain reference points that we could address. So for example, Department of School Education schemes are there, and certain schemes are there which hit upon different aspects of culture. There is no holistic framework for it, but in bits and pieces, again, you can see that it has been addressed. So modernization scheme of madrasa education is there. Sanskrit education development schemes are there. Now these are national level schemes. At state level, there are certain schemes. For example, universalization of secondary education, upgradation of madrasas. So I think I'm not sure if this radar report has been shared with you all, but if you read these in detail, you'll get some clear idea about it. So for example, now one of this, yeah, did I miss something? Okay. Yeah, so now you can see that there's also an online portal for school education department, which touches upon this aspect of cultural tourist places, like tourist places of cultural interest in Madhya Pradesh. And there is some information regarding this that can be found. Then action point number 3, development of a local platform or a network which allows the public, civic and private actors in the field of culture and education to interact and work in conjunction. So as ma'am also mentioned earlier in the presentation, that HEX has developed, has these heritage clubs and schools which conduct these kind of training activities. But unfortunately for Bhopal, such or similar activity has not been taken up. As far as my knowledge is concerned, by the time, like the time when we were doing this project, which was in 2019 that we were working on this report. So I'm not sure that if after that this has been taken up, but till then, but certainly this can be taken up for Bhopal city as well, or cities in nearby vicinity to the Bhopal city. So, but apart from that, there are several other civil society organizations in place that take education and culture together as the priority areas of work. Then action point number 4, enabling cultural institutions to provide educational activities for formal and informal environment, and also dedicating a significant part of their budget to them. Certainly, unfortunately, this has been taken care of in a great length. So you have a lot of education institutions dedicated to specifically cultural activities. And there you have formal as well as informal education modes. So formal, you have degree, diploma courses, short-term courses. Informal, you have training activities, workshop. And specifically for these institutions, there's a cultural budget that is dedicated. And these activities are conducted as a part of these cultural institutions. So there's this list of institutions and what kind of formal education activity has been taken up or informal education activity has been taken up by each and every institution. It mentions over here. So for example, if I were to say, for example, MP Urdu Academy, which is the 4th serial number. So there's 1-year diploma course in Urdu, 1-year certificate course in Persian, 2-year calligraphy graphic design course, 1-year certificate program in Arabic. And so these are certain formal education activities that are being carried out by MP Urdu Academy. And Sahitya Sammelan, discussion programs, seminars are also conducted by them. Then similarly, for various other institutions, you can see that either they have formal or informal educational activity that has been taken up. Now, since these educational institutions are specifically dedicated to some or the other spectrum of culture, so they have these activities in place. There's much more room for increasing or further enhancing these kind of educational activities. But certainly the presence of these institutions in itself becomes very important, because you have a framework or you have something on ground which can, you just need to work further on the policy framework for it, and which can further take it forward. So yeah, so this was one of the things that was very important for this particular commitment that we came across. Then action point number 5, initiating processes for digitally sharing information about cultural activities and opportunities for cultural education, online portals, information centers, etc. So as of now, you can see about the cultural activities in the sense day to day, you have a lot of events that are taking place in a lot of cultural centers in the city. There is very less information available about it. So either you can find it in the dailies, local dailies, that you have these list of information. One thing that we mentioned in this for this particular action point was also that for bigger cities or metro cities, you could see that, for example, one of the applications that you all must be knowing about is this Book My Show thing. Book My Show for cities like Delhi, Mumbai and all, it actually mentions on the daily basis the cultural events that are taking place. Either they are free of cost or not, or you can physically go over there, or it's an online thing. So there's a mention of it. But for Bhopal, apart from movies or some major event, these smaller local events are not basically. You cannot actually find them on these websites or these applications. So certainly there is a gap which can be integrated. This gap can be reduced if we just try to bring in these fragments into one picture per se. So you have these applications, you have these websites and all, you just need to link them. You have Facebook pages, you have Instagram handles. If you can just link them, and there can be much more digital sharing about these activities on daily basis, it would make it much more interesting, as well as you will have a lot of people interacting, or a lot of people coming into the picture and taking it further. So then action point number 6, encouraging schools to incorporate a curriculum for students which helps them acquire knowledge pertaining to intercultural dialogue, value of diversity, creativity and heritage. So for this particular action point, we don't have specifically any subject that is dedicated to culture, but in most of the cases, as you all must be knowing, state boards, especially for different states, they actually try to bring in at least some information about famous cultural centers or heritage monuments in social sciences subject from 9th to 12th. in the curriculum, academic curriculum. There's a room for improvement or including more information into it. But as of now, at least basic information like the information about history of ancient India, popular cultural sites like Bhimbetka, period of Maurya dynasty, period of Gupta dynasty, Sanchi Stupa, these are all covered. So, I mean, if HEX can actually contribute to this, that would be much more beneficial, even at school level. Then action point number 7, encouraging schools, education centers, association and businesses to participate in cultural creation, distribution and mediation activities, art residency, creative trainings, etc. So the school education department is trying to build and develop new cultural traditions through various education institutions. And there have been certain discussions regarding it. One of the biggest event that school department organizes is Mowgli Utsav. It's a fictional character, as you all must be knowing about it. And it's the character's roots are in the Pench. It's a city in MP. And so Mowgli Utsav is one of the Utsavs, which is actually on the lines of cultural activities. And a lot of cultural activities happen in this Mowgli Utsav, which are specifically for students, school students. And it's a form of interpretation of culture. And it's a theme-based event, and similar events on different lines, which can actually help promote cultural values more, can be taken up. But as of now, what we could find was one of these events that was holding a larger significance in the terms that was catering to a larger number of people, and its outreach was more. So then action point number 8, accessibility of all forms of artistic education, music, visual arts, performing arts to people regardless of social, economic, cultural, or gender criteria. So certainly, as I've mentioned earlier, also there are a lot of cultural institutions that are there, and they are accessible to also. When we say accessibility of all forms of artistic education, we mean to say that there is no sort of discrimination in terms of social, economic, culture, or gender basis, and it's unbiased and impartial and can be taken up for all, because it's for all. The cultural values and importance of cultural values is not something which should have any sort of a bias. And the education institutions, the cultural institutions, they promote more intake, and there's no, we could not find of any sort of bias that is there. Rather, there is much more, they kind of promote that people from all spectrums of society could come in to their institutions. Then action point number 9 is provision of local training in cultural management and cultural policies, which emphasize on a comprehensive approach to cultural factors of human development. As of now, we could not find any sort of local training in cultural management and cultural policies. This point is something which can be taken forward as a part of a cultural policy per se. But this needs to be addressed in much more length and much more detail. Then action point number 10, ensuring that both cultural and human rights are a part of education curriculum and training activities. So as you all remember, our first commitment was about cultural rights. So there is very less understanding about cultural rights as specific kind of rights. So we all understand and know human rights, but until unless there's an understanding or there's a separate framework that addresses cultural rights, it would be really difficult to actually again try to bring these two aspects together and come up with a holistic framework. So I think for this action point also, I would say that there's a huge parameter, or there's a huge gap that is there, that exists, which is the lesser understanding of cultural rights, or I can say that specific framework that addresses cultural rights specifically as a part of human rights, or as something which is in combination with human rights. So yeah, so I think with this, I would say that These were the action points, and for few action points, we could find a lot of relevant information, but for few of them, certainly the action point itself, the parameters that it mentions need to be addressed. Then only we can come up with a common platform or a common sort of a framework that addresses both the aspects together. So yeah, okay, so I think that's for it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Akriti. We'll now take questions quickly, if anyone has any questions. No? All right, I think it was very extensive today. Of course, a lot of it was explained by Poonima ma'am, and how they probably carry out their activities, as a distinct division dedicated specifically for this task, and which kind of emphasizes on the whole conversation that we are having today.